everyone, today we're going to be putting together this floral wreath that I made using the all-around creativity kit. There are 5 kits available on my website that you can purchase through the end of February. Today I'm going to show you how I use the Grateful kit to create this floral wreath that I designed to match my home decor. Each all-around creativity kit includes everything you need to make the wreath. You have instructions, you have a couple of sheets of laser cut leaves, the bow, and flowers. You also get 4 background circles. These are 16-inch wreaths, so the circles are 16 inches big, and there are 4 patterns, and you have the 16-inch plywood wreath in your kit with the sentiment of choice. I decided not to put a background on mine, but I wanted to use this adorable yellow polka dot pattern. So I decided to cut out the antlers of the buck using my Cricut with that polka dot pattern sheet. Let me show you what that looks like in Cricut Design Space. The wreath and the background sheets measure 16 inches in diameter. So my deer needs to be structured proportionately. And you can see here, it's 10 inches wide, but the height was over 15 inches high. This would work on the background sheets, but it's not going to work on a 12 by 12 Cricut mat. So I had to make a few adjustments to the cut. I sliced the antler image. I took a square shape, I placed it on the bottom half of the antler image, resized it, then used the slice feature to remove the bottom half of the antler. When I go to make it, you'll see that both of these images are going to fit on my 12 by 12 mat. Let me show you how I put this project together. Here I have my 2 Cricut cuts, one out of that polka dot background sheet, the other out of some craft paper, and I'm using some toffee ink to add some ink to the edges of the antlers, and I will also do the same with the deer shape. I'm just going right around the edges with the ink and adding a little bit of dimension by darkening those edges. On the face of the deer, I decided to add a little shadowing as well, just to give it some more dimension and depth. After adhering the antlers to the top of the deer, I realized that some of the white was showing through, and this is probably because I glued it down crooked. So I just took some of that toffee ink and ran it along the edges, and it hid that white edge perfectly. Now I can start looking at adding my leaves and flowers. Your kit comes with laser cut leaves and flowers that are easy to punch out from the backing sheet. Here I'm just going to start arranging them onto the top of the deer head, and I have some dark leaves, some lighter colored leaves, some mint colored leaves, and white flowers. I'm just doing a quick little layout to see exactly how I want them placed at the top of the deer. By doing this, I can have a feel for the design before I commit to anything. Initially, after laying it out, I wanted another flower, so I'm going to punch out a flower from the sheet. And like I said, these laser cut flowers are super easy to punch out. They come right off that backing sheet, and you have multiple layers per flower to stack on top of each other and create a nice 3-dimensional look. After taking a step back, this was a little too full for me, so I'm going to remove one of the flowers and add a few more leaves to this design. Now that I have a feel for the layout, I can start adhering these leaves and flowers to the top of the deer head. On the right side of the deer, I have already inked and shaped my leaves. I'm using 3 shades of ink, New England Ivy, Fern, and Sweet Leaf, to add shading to the leaves and give them a 3-dimensional look. Let me show you how I did that. Here I have one of the larger, darker leaves that I'm going to ink with New England Ivy, and I'm just going to go around the edges of each one of the leaves to give it a little bit of depth and dimension. To create the look of a vein on each leaf, I'm just going to fold along the score line, then add some ink, fold it back going the correct direction, and add a little bit of curl to the leaf. And now it looks like I have a vein on the leaf. I just repeat the process with each leaf, folding on the score line, adding ink, and then folding back and adding a little bit of curl. By doing this, I've given my leaves a more realistic look for my project. Now I'm just going to pinch and curl and shape the leaves so that they look more like real foliage. To give this project an even more realistic look, I'm going to adhere the leaves onto the deer head using foam tape. By adding more dimension to the project, I've given it a multi-layer look that fools the eye into thinking these are real leaves. I'm going to continue this process using New England ivy, fern, and sweet leaf ink on each one of the die cuts. Once all of these are down and placed onto the deer head using foam tape, I can start adding my flowers. Before adding the flowers, I flipped it over and realized some of the foam tape was showing and it was a little sticky. So I'm taking my anti-static bag and I'm just going to tap it onto these foam squares. This will remove the tackiness and prevent it from sticking where I don't want it to stick. I've decided to make my flowers red, and instead of using my sponge to ink them, I'm going to use a spray pen with re-inker to color them a very deep shade of red. So we have these spray pens, and you just unscrew the top, add your re-inker inside, and I'm using candy apple ink. You only need a couple of drops. The more color you use, the more intense the color will be. I'm going to be using isopropyl alcohol instead of water because it dries faster. And to add a little bit of sparkle, I'm going to add some drops of our red shimmer brush. We used to have pearlescent paint that added some shimmer. We don't carry that anymore, and I've been having a hard time finding it. I did find that the red shimmer brush works just as well. So I'm adding a few drops of that. Then I'm going to pour in that alcohol. Do not fill it all the way to the top. When you add the lid is going to cause a little bit of displacement in the liquid. And if you fill it all the way to the top, you're going to end up with a mess all over your hands. So do not fill it all the way to the top. Make sure there's a little bit of space. Then add your lid, screw it on tight, and you're ready to color your flowers. Since I added some shimmer into there, I'm going to shake it up a little bit, then lay out my flower die cuts onto my all-purpose mat, spreading them apart so that they don't touch. I love having this all-purpose mat. It's easy to clean, especially for projects like this. You're also going to want to make sure that you have on crafty clothes and you have all of your other surfaces covered. Prime your spray pen a little bit over to the side and then start spritzing your flowers. The more you spritz, the darker the color, and you're going to notice they do kind of roll up a little bit. They will flatten later. That's okay. Just spritz, spritz, spritz. Get as much red color on there as you want, and if you go back and re-spritz, you're going to intensify the color. I've set my flowers aside to dry because I wanted to show you how easy it is to clean up this all-purpose mat. I'm just taking a wet wipe, or you can use a stamp chamois, and just wiping it up and cleaning it up. It looks rather horrific at this point, but I will tell you it was simple to clean and I had it ready for my next project. My flowers dried really quickly because I used that alcohol, and now I am taking some candy apple red ink and I'm just inking the edges of each one of the petals. This just gives it a little bit more depth and dimension, just like all of the other items I inked in this project. I'm going to start adhering the layers of flowers together using both thin dots and 3D foam dots. This gives me a nice look to my flowers and makes them appear more realistic. Before I do that, I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to roll down each one of the petals. So I just simply run it along my thumb, kind of like you do when you're trying to roll ribbon with a pair of scissors. Do it nice and gently. This paper is thin. You don't want to tear your petals off. And after I've rolled each petal, then I'm going to bend them up. I'm going to add 2 layers of 3D foam dots in the center, prep my next layer by rolling down the petals again, then bending them up, then placing that flower on top of the base layer, rotating it slightly. I'm going to repeat the same process for the next layer, but this time I'm going to use a single thin foam dot between the 2 layers. Again, rotating it slightly and placing it down on the flower. The next layer has the petals curled again, bent up, and a single 3D foam dot placed between the layers. The final layer is shaped again, just like the others, and I'm going to use a 3D foam dot between the layers and place it right on top. By alternating the foam dots and rotating the layers, I have a more realistic look and it's ready to be placed onto that floral wreath. We're going to repeat the same process with the second flower. Through the magic of editing, we have completed the second flower just like we did the first, and I'm just fluffing it up a little bit here. And these are both ready to be placed onto the wreath. As you can see here, I did decide to only use one of the flowers. I added a little brad and stuck it on there. I also stained my wreath using some gray ink to give it a nice color. I decided that I wanted to add something to the bottom. It felt too top heavy. So I've got some leaves laid down, and I'm going to create the paper bow that comes with the kit. So you have 3 different loops and you have the base. You simply fold the loops over and you'll glue them down in the center, then place each layer atop the other to create that 3-dimensional bow. Let's take a look at what this looks like on the instruction sheet. It shows me all of the parts and pieces and how those go together with that little loop in the middle and the 2 ribbons. So now that I have taken a look at the instruction sheet, we can assemble the bow. I'm using some quick drying liquid adhesive, applying it to that small tab, then folding it over and placing the tab in the center. I'm going to repeat it with the tab on the other side, placing it down in the center, holding it in place just for a few seconds, and then the first layer of the bow is complete. I'll repeat this process with the second bow, putting glue onto that tab, then onto the other tab, folding them both into the center and holding them in place for a few seconds. You do the same thing again with the third layer, just gluing those 2 tabs together, holding them in place, and now we can layer all 3 of these loops to form my bow. The kit includes this little center strip to adhere all 3 bows together. So I'm going to first glue each of the individual loops together, then wrap that center strip around all 3 so that I have a complete 3-dimensional bow. Before adding the bow, I'm going to add the remainder of the leaves at the base of the wreath, and I have inked these. I have folded them in the same manner that I did for the leaves that are at the top. I'm going to apply them to the wreath using a variety of foam tape and foam squares and foam dots just to give it some extra dimension. And once the leaves are applied, then I'll add that bow. I did notice that some of the stems of the leaves were sticking out, and I really did not like the way that looked, so I'm just going to take some scissors and trim those stems. I added a few more leaves and then applied the bow onto my wreath using some foam tape. Now, once I stuck it on there, it still didn't quite feel right, so I decided that I did want to add those 2 ribbon strands to the base. I cut that strand in half, removed the bow from my wreath, glued down the 2 strips at the base of the wreath, and then put the bow right on top. And I liked the way this looked so much more. It felt balanced and complete. I hope that you enjoyed today's project and that you were inspired to try something new. Make sure that if you want to see future projects, you subscribe to my channel. This wreath kit was so fun to create and is so easy to personalize for your home. We currently have 5 designs available for you to purchase on my website through the end of February. Each kit comes with all of the supplies you need to complete a wreath to match your home, just like I did. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.